Okay.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Snack and Chat, Adopt for Life's weekly Facebook Live, where we explore the topics that are top of mind for families formed by adoption, kinship, and customary care. Today, I'm excited. I have two guests, Mary Jo Land and Princess Land, and we're going to talk about siblings, all things siblings. My name is Chantal. I'm the Community Engagement Liaison with Adopt for Life. I would like to begin by acknowledging the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the lands which we all call home. For myself, I reside on unceded Algonquin Anishinaabe territory. We do this acknowledgement to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations, and as a first step towards improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. So I invite you to join me in a moment of reflection to acknowledge the harms and mistakes of the past and to consider how we are and can each in our own way action forward in a spirit of reconciliation and collaboration. So thanks again for tuning in, whether you're tuning in live or on replay. Thank you for taking the time to be with us. You can add your comments in the chat, or if you have questions for us or just want to say hi, you're obviously welcome to do so. We want to make this discussion as engaging as possible for you. I will do a quick reminder that this is a live stream on our public Facebook page. So whatever you are including in the comments is going to be publicly available. So I'll just ask you to be mindful and to not include identifiable information if you're referring to your children. So just keep that in mind. And we look forward to hearing from you. So before we get started, I'm just going to introduce to you Mary Jo, who is a registered psychotherapist. You probably recognize her. She's been on a few Snack and Chats and done quite a few Adopt for Life webinars and panels. She's a psychotherapist specializing in attachment, trauma, and parenting. She facilitates secondary attachment and the resolution of developmental trauma through family and parent psychotherapy. She is the author of Caring Together, a guide for parents, foster parents, and adoptive parents of children who are in care. She's also an active board member and advisor with Adopt for Life and has been so for many years. So thank you, Mary Jo, for joining. And thank you, Princess, for also joining. Princess Land's journey in the child welfare system began when she was 4 years old. She met her wonderful family at the age of 9, and they adopted her when she was 14. Over the years, Princess has worked with Child and Youth Permanency Council of Canada, formerly known as the Adoption Council of Canada, and Adopt for Life on various projects. You might have, she's written quite a few blogs for us in the Let's Talk About series. So I might post some links to those in the chat later if you're not familiar. She's advocating for youth in and from the system. It's been a passion of hers, and she does it to help create change and to pave the road for those who come next. So thank you, Princess, for taking time to be on Snack and Chat today. So we have done a Snack and Chat on siblings before, but it was more about geared towards awaiting parents and educating parents on the benefit, on why to adopt siblings as a group and why that's the best way to move forward. Today's episode, I want to talk more about the relationships of siblings as it's so unique. So before we get started, can we take a step back and talk more about your family journey? I know in your bio it said that you met when you were 9 and then you were adopted at 14.
Actually met my mom when I was, I believe, 8. She was my therapist. So I was going to therapy for about a year, and my mom, I guess she realized that the home I was in just wasn't for me. So she asked me one night, sorry, I'm losing my voice here. Asked me one night if I wanted to come over for dinner. And I was like, I mean, better than freaking macaroni and meat and McDonald's, so why not? So I went over, met the rest of the family, went to the park with her kids, but now my siblings, and just had a blast. And I've never had so much fun. I mean, I was 9, but like I hadn't experienced joy like that before. So went to the park, all that, had a great night, helped make dinner, and then went home back to my foster family. And then at my next session, my mom asked me if I wanted to move in. They had a spare room, and I was like, well, the jackpot, heck yeah. So I moved in a week later after my birthday, and then we went to the cottage 3 days later. It was just like a jam-packed summer of fun, and it was amazing. But yeah, so we had been with them since I was 9. And then I think it was around, I think it was like 13 or 12 is when they said they wanted to adopt me, but the process was really long. I still remember when they told me. I was in the car, had a nightmare, woke up crying, and said that we got in a car accident, and my siblings went to their aunts, and I went back to the system, and my parents had died from a car accident. My parents pulled over to the side of the road and told me that they wanted to adopt me, and the rest is history. We started the process, and by 14, I was adopted. And I remember on my 14th birthday, my mom gave me a girl engagement ring, and that was the first thing anyone had ever given me that had belonged to them, like kind of like been passed down in a way. So yeah, so I got adopted at 14 and been advocating for youth and care since I was, I guess, 16, off and on. But yeah, that's, I guess, the journey of our family.
So
My point of view.
last night, Princess and I were doing some prep together, and like, Princess, maybe like that's a beautiful story. But last night you told me something that I didn't really know, that you'd never told me before, about what it felt like to feel that joy, and then the next set of feelings that kind of brought out, or with respect to your siblings.
Yeah, well, like in the moment, of course, I'm living in the moment. I'm happy, I'm smiling, and all that. But afterwards, like near the end, or like when I left or the land home, I just felt a rush of guilt, and I felt disgusting with myself, because how could I be having so much fun? My dad's calling right now. How could I be having so much fun while I don't even know where some of my siblings are, or one of my siblings is in a group home, and I know they weren't treating her the best there. So like I felt guilty for actually being happy for once in my life. And I know now like that it's not my fault, but I can't help what I was feeling. I felt like I was 9 years old, feeling like I was carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders. And yeah, no, it wasn't a great feeling.
Because you were getting this opportunity, and you felt like your siblings had a different, maybe not so happy events happening in their life or situations.
Yeah. And also just didn't know where, I think at least 2 of my siblings were at. No, 2 of my siblings at the time. I didn't know where 2 of them were. And then it ended up being I didn't know where 3 of them were. So
yeah.
And so she just expressed that to you recently, like it's not something that you talked about before. Yeah. And we're talking about that a bit later too, because that comes up, that guilt that adoptees often feel.
Yeah.
Kind of, torn between different worlds in a way. Thank you for sharing that. As I said, the previous Snack and Chat we talked a lot about adopting sibling groups, and it's an ongoing learning about everything that comes with that. So as that is for a lot of children, their remaining connection to their original family and maybe their biological history. So because they've been already separated from everything and everyone that was familiar to them. So Mary Jo, maybe for awaiting parents, you could help share more like that impact of keeping siblings together whenever possible.
So we know that siblings is for any person really, so the relationship that you have with your siblings is probably the longest relationship that you'll have in your life. Usually it's the people that you grow up with and the people that you're connected with through family events over time. And then eventually, because the older generations die off, and then siblings are the ones who are left connected. And so we know that that's the longest relationship that most people have. And when siblings are separated, they may have had some very close relationships, for better or worse, like different kinds of relationships, not necessarily all, when you live in a home where there's abuse and neglect, then the relationships can be fraught, they can be challenging, but still it's the shared experience. And so if siblings are not placed together and adopted together, the loss of that shared history is something, it's another loss. It's another loss. And the goal for children is to really reduce losses, maintain connections, reduce losses is the overall goal. And if siblings can't be placed together, what siblings should be able to say is, even though we didn't live together, we grew up together. And being able to share important events throughout their lives and know each other as they grow up. And that's what we're trying to achieve, really, is even if they're not placed together, that they have this experience of growing up together.
Well said. Princess, do you want to add anything? Like if you could speak to awaiting parents out there if they're considering adopting siblings?
That one's there's not a whole lot I can add to that. I mean, I know it's not really possible, like for me, I have 6 siblings from my biological family, a lot of us. And I know there wouldn't have been possible to adopt all of us together. And to be frank, I don't think it would have been the greatest idea if, I know it sounds horrible, but if any of my siblings and I got adopted together, just because of the history we have and like our past and all that we went through, I know that us growing up together in an adoptive home, it just would have been a lot of pain. I know anytime we had a visit, although we did enjoy our time together, at the end it always got sad, and we just always remembered everything that had happened in our biological family, and like our biological mom's home, and we wouldn't have been healing ever. So every situation is different, and I guess we need to consider the siblings and how they interact with each other. I was fortunate enough to have one of my siblings close to me while I was living in Ancaster. But yeah, an adoption with my siblings wouldn't have been ideal.
Yeah,
I mean, horrible for saying that, but it's a fact.
But Princess, you also did want that. You wanted that one sister to be with us, and that was hard for me to explain to you that we couldn't. There were a number of years where you really wanted for her to be in our family with you.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I was young.
Really hard.
Yeah, and at the time, like my sister was all I really knew. We went from our biological mom to different foster homes together, and I felt like a mother to her. A kid that's a mother, that sounds weird, but like I felt like a mother to her, and I couldn't let go. I know now, like looking back, it wouldn't have been a great situation, but it didn't matter to me when I was young. And I know if it did happen, I would obviously adjust and make it, well, I wouldn't have been adjusting because I would have been still feeling like a mother. I wouldn't have really had my own life. even if she got adopted, I would have been worrying about her all the time. Even though I still am, I wouldn't have been able to grow and be my own person because I would just be focusing on her only.
Mhm. Thanks for that. It's like you said, every situation is unique and needs its own unique lens on things.
Yeah.
And that's actually one of my next questions, because there are circumstances and times when it's not possible to keep siblings together. But in that same context, like you were saying, Mary Jo, about you may not live together, but you can still grow up together. So maybe we can share with the community ways, like the importance of maintaining that connection through openness and what that can look like, because it's not the same for every family.
Yeah, so for me, thinking about as a psychotherapist and not necessarily as an adoptive parent, that there are only a couple of reasons really why we wouldn't place siblings together. And one is that the sum of the needs of the children, so if the more children you have, the more needs there are to be met. That has to be, less than what parents can manage. It can't be more than what parents can manage. So if there's a sibling set and each child has very complex needs, and it's difficult to get adequate supports for that family, then we risk sinking everyone. So we have to really pay attention to what are the needs of all of the children, have good assessments to tell us that, and then figure out with parents what is their capacity to meet all of those needs, and what supports can we offer them. Living in rural areas, sometimes there aren't enough supports. And then sometimes the relationships amongst the children are too fraught, that which I don't, years ago when I was adopting Princess, that was a long time ago. And, frankly, maybe things would have been different today. I would have known more today. But if one sibling interferes with the attachment of another sibling to the parents, that's a risk factor, which could be managed therapeutically. And then if one sibling is harming one or more of the other siblings, and sometimes that can be managed therapeutically or for a temporary out-of-home placement while that therapeutic interventions take place. So those are really the three reasons. One is too many needs for the parents. Two is the interference of the ability of one child to attach to the parents. So when one child is kind of wanting to parent the other and therefore, like Princess said, is acting as if one child is responsible for another child, and therefore the child that's feeling responsible for another child is not really accepting parenting because they're acting as a parent. And then, the child who is being parented by their older sibling is not being parented by an adult, but being parented by a sibling. So sometimes those are really complex relationships that might be dealt with therapeutically and then resolved, and then the siblings could be together again. So it just depends on, I mean, for us, I think we had a lot of those factors going on. And Princess and her siblings had lots of complex needs. So yeah.
Now that you mention it, the stubborn person I know I am, I would have been like that. The dynamic growing up wouldn't have been good. I probably would have been really sassy. I mean, I am already sassy, but I would have been like, "Who do you think you are trying to parent my sister?" It wouldn't have been good.
Yeah.
So when we put out sort of the promotion that we were doing this snack and chat, I did get some questions ahead of time from parents. So one parent asked that, so they recently found out that their daughter, who's 7, has a sibling, and that sibling just entered the foster care system. So what is an age-appropriate way to share this information, and how can we best support her, as well as ensure a connection is maintained as sort of like, they're navigating that journey?
So for any young child, really, I think things come best in the form of stories. And so for children who are that young, one is that they need help in understanding the whole system and what's happening and why. And they also need that story told over and over so that it becomes, just kind of, this is the way it is, right? So I like to have books made with or for the child. And then there's all kinds of nice ways on the internet to make nice hard copy books. But just to create a book about this child's life, their first family, their transition through foster care, their placement in this family. So that's kind of like a life book, only more focused on how the system works and their story of movement from family to family to family. And then you say, and now your first family has had another baby, and that baby is moving through just like you did, and now they're in a foster home, and the foster parents are pictured, and then you have pictures of the sibling and pictures of the foster family. So all of this can be introduced in a format that can be used over and over and over as the child needs and requests. And so then the child has a picture of their sibling and knows their sibling's name, knows the family that the sibling is with, and then, the questions will begin. And some questions, like, when do I get to see my, baby brother or whatever? Some questions, the answer is, I just don't know. We have to wait and see. And those are hard questions to have an I don't know answer for. And yet we share that journey with our children. We help them to manage the I don't know. The world is not a perfect place. We will always have I don't knows in the world. And help them manage. We try not to protect our child too much from having difficult information. Rather, we think about how do we present the difficult information in a way that they can mull with it and take it in slowly, have it presented in a way that's very thoughtful, and then how do we keep telling that story, keep supporting them, keep answering their questions, and be there with them to support them in their emotional responses and their which will be multiple different emotions and responses. So it's just about being there with them. And really, I used an expression yesterday in therapy I'd never used before, but it was kind of like, I said, it's like a radio, you want to turn up the dial on your sensitivity so that you're just more closely attuned to how your child is thinking and feeling and reacting in the days following sharing some more difficult information. Really, really just paying attention, listening with your heart very carefully to how your child is responding to the information, and keep the dialogue open and flowing.
I like that. Turn up the dial. And I think, would you say that it's important for the parents to keep bringing, so if the child is not going and asking for this book or this story, but for the parent to really keep initiating the conversation?
Yep, because children may not have the deeply ingrained feeling that any topic is safe to talk about. I can rely on my parents. It will be okay if I'm upset. It will be okay if I'm quiet. Whatever I am is okay and accepted by my parents. So, it's in that way we're modeling checking in. We're modeling, I see you're sad, does that have anything to do with thinking about your new sibling and not being able to see them just yet? So we can make good guesses about what our children might be experiencing, and they'll say, no, I'm not sad about that at all. I'm sad because, somebody took my spot in the line at school, right?
Yeah.
And so just making some guesses means that you're important enough to me for me to think about and make some guesses about what's going on for you. And the guess usually results in, yeah, you're right, or no, you're wrong. I was thinking about this other thing. It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. We get a lot of questions from parents about, what can they expect, or how can they best prepare when they're welcoming children into their home, whether that's a sibling set or maybe, in the situation where they have a child, they've adopted a child, and now they're bringing another child into the home. I know it's every situation is different, and you can't sort of say this is what is going to happen, and so you can expect this. But in a more sort of roundabout way, is there something that parents can do to help support when there's a sibling relationship is created through adoption?
Yeah, so
kind of like back off and see how it goes.
no, I wouldn't necessarily do that because, well, for one thing, I think we need to be very mindful about the children already in the home when a new child comes into the home. And whether you're a foster parent or whether you're an adopting family, having a new child come in means something really, really important to the children who are already there. You're going to share your parents with another person. And it's the sharing of your parents, their time, their attention, that can be really difficult. So if there is a single child in the home and there's a new child coming in, that's the most difficult part, because that child isn't used to sharing their parents. In my family of already 4 children plus another foster child, adding one more was, for my children, not really something that they were unused to. Although adopting was different. We had been therapeutic foster parents for 20 years, and then we stopped doing that when we decided that Princess would join our family forever. We didn't want other foster children coming and going. And so for Princess to be just, sort of the end of fostering and then the beginning of having a sister forever, that was a bit different for them. And we did have to prepare them, especially some of my children were older. And so, what does that mean 15, 20, 30 years down the road, that you'll still have an additional sibling, even when we're not around? And what does that look like? So, the older the children, the more conversation you can have about long-term, what's it going to look like long-term? What are the expectations? And in our family, everyone else is white, and as you can see, Princess is not. But I mean, you can't tell what about the rest of our family. So what was that going to be like? For my children, it wasn't an issue. What we didn't know is that maybe it was an issue for other members of the family that we didn't really know about just then, right? Yeah. And so adding in the new sibling, I again like the use of a book, especially if the child is younger and is an only sibling, only child in the family just so far. I really like the idea of having a book. I'm actually going through this process with some clients just now, and they're doing something really lovely right now. Their child is fairly young, and a new one is coming, and so they keep saying, oh, so if the child was here right now, I wonder what the child would be doing. I wonder what I would be doing. And I wonder what you would be doing. And so this process of mentalizing for the child, imagining is another word, but let's use the word imagining. The process of just imagining at a child who's old enough to do that. So 4, 5, 6, just imagining what it would be like right now. Oh, so right now, you've got all my attention, but what if the new child was here just now? And what if the new child was crying? I would have to get up and go and do that instead of doing this with you. And so I just like this idea of this constant kind of imagining, pretending, oh, if we were at the park right now, I'd be pushing you and I'd be pushing the new one, right? So I really like that idea. I think that's a good way to have the child begin to think about what it would be like. But again, we can't really help children know what it's going to be like, because it's way more complicated than they can ever imagine. Right? It's the most difficult part is sharing your parents. Sharing your space is second, your toys third, but sharing your parents and their time, their attention, their love. And for children who are adopted, one of the more difficult pieces is, and Princess can probably speak to this, is seeing the children who are already in the home experience a relationship with their parents, who are now your own parents. So I'm not talking about the one coming in, especially if they're a little bit older. Seeing that attachment, that relationship, that closeness, that intimacy, that ease, that joy, existing in that relationship, and perhaps the child who's being adopted has never experienced that kind of relationship before, right? So they see this, and I often describe that experience as the rest of the family is, standing around a huge buffet of every kind of food there is, and they're just eating away, having a great time, which is the buffet is the relationship and the love and the joy. And the child who's coming in, who's never experienced that before, kind of feels like there's a glass wall, and they're standing outside this glass wall looking in.
That's literally how I felt, to a T.
So we have to pay attention to the child behind the glass wall. We have to make sure that they somehow get welcomed to this buffet.
I'd say you guys did a pretty dang good job doing that.
Well, Princess is my baby, and we talk more than I talk with any of my other children. But yeah.
Hopefully. So we're gonna talk about a bigger topic that probably will take, I think we're gonna need siblings part 2, Snack and Chat.
Yeah.
All of our questions today, there's so much to talk about. But let's talk about siblings, adoption, and identity, and dig into what we can with what the time we have. So we know identity is one of the core issues, one of the 7 that has been written about, 7 core issues in adoption, and how that sibling can directly impact our identity. There's possible ruptures of sibling relationships, possible creation of new sibling relationships. I mean, where do we, I'm just gonna leave it open. It's not really like a specific question, but yeah, I mean, for me personally, like I was adopted, it was a closed adoption. I had a brother who was adopted, and we are siblings since we've known each other. And we have a bond, but would it be, sometimes you question, would I have a different bond if I had a sibling that I had from my birth family? I feel even as an adult, unanswered questions that kind of just bounce around in my brain from time to time. But I think it's a really fascinating subject too. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
I'm gonna let you go first, Princess.
All right. I'm sorry. I'm gonna need you to repeat the question again. Sorry.
Okay.
I don't know, like what you think about.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Princess, just think about how, like, remember the, I have pictures of Mother's Day where my children, the 5 of them and myself, are playing basketball in the driveway.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And I have pictures of Princess and 2 of her siblings playing basketball in the driveway. And I just think about those 2 sets of pictures, and thinking about the 3 children who all look similar, and the family where there's 4 white children and 1 black child, but they're all like adolescents and adults. And for me, like, that just has a meaning that I don't know enough about. But what was it like for you that in one Sunday afternoon, you're the person who's different, and in another Sunday afternoon on a sibling visit, everyone is the same? I don't know, what's that like?
I didn't feel like I but at the time I didn't feel like I belonged in either setting. When I look at those photos, I know the photos you're talking about. When I look at them, I see a sadness in my eyes, and I felt that sadness because I didn't feel like I belonged. I guess I was happy, like playing basketball and doing all the things that we were doing, but at the same time I didn't feel like there's obviously the visible difference, and also going out in public with our family, people made it very clear that there was a visible difference, even though like we have eyes we can see. I just, there's always like that barrier for me. And obviously now it's not the same, but growing up there was a barrier, and I just felt like I belonged anywhere. And when I was with my siblings, yes, we all looked alike, but just the connection wasn't the same. And often some of my siblings would bring up the past a lot, and like they try to joke about it, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't like, our experience was different. Like I don't want to say anything bad about, yeah. So like, yeah, our experience is different, and I just didn't feel like I belonged in either setting at the time. And trying to find my footing, eventually I felt like I was leaning towards, not like it was I had to choose, but like it was easier for me to find my footing within our family than it was with my biological siblings. And now I only talk to two of them. Yeah, I only talk to two of them. I'm sorry, I need to close the camera for just 1 second. I'm not crying, don't worry.
So the identity piece, I think, is a really important piece in terms of siblings. Siblings have this shared history that no one else has. And for some families, like Princess, it's a really difficult history. And sometimes you don't want to share it. Sometimes you don't want to have those recollections. Mm-hmm. And yet, there are other families where siblings were so close and were protective of each other and gave each other comfort, and that being together means that they had a shared experience that brought them closer together. And for those siblings to be together is just so crucial, that they grow up together and they maintain that bond. I know in many of the families that I work with, there is a sibling set, and I can't even imagine that these siblings wouldn't be together. And in other families, sometimes siblings come together in an adoption and it doesn't work. And then the siblings are in separate homes and they continue to see each other. And so I think there's a huge range from, oh my goodness, these little peanuts that were, say, little children together and they've always been together, that they get moved together and they're in their family forever together, and they're sisters or brothers or siblings, and they're close, and that's a bond that we would never consider having them not together. And yet I think the risk as children are older, the older the sibling group is, the more complex, fraught those relationships can be. And they've gone so long without therapeutic support or without parental support to repair those relationships, then those relationships can be much more difficult to create a feeling of positive, joyful, supportive relationships. So again, it's different for every single sibling group. We start with the premise that siblings should be together, and we go from there. And we do our darndest to keep siblings together. And I think, Princess is in her 20s now. I won't say. Her siblings are now all adults, and the relationship changes over time. And they have these adult relationships that I don't have anything to do with. No, she manages her own relationships with her family of origin and her siblings, and we talk about it, but I'm not responsible in any way for the relationship. She is. And still that's needs some support sometimes. It's not easy sometimes. And I think that's one of the most difficult things I think you've said, Princess, and you made a lovely quote in the book Caring Together for me, was simply losing track. When you were a child, no one assisted in terms of agency or whatever to help you keep track of where your siblings went. And so you lost contact with some of your siblings for a long time.
Yeah. I had this one social worker, I believe she got fired. She often lied about my siblings and I would see each other at least once a month. She lied about that, and we'd go months without seeing each other. And then eventually, one of my siblings, she unfortunately had some broken down adoptions. On the last adoption she had, her family sent a letter to some of us. I know I got one. I don't know about the rest of my siblings. Pretty much saying, we adopted your sister, change her name. We don't want anything to do with you. Please don't contact her. So for 15 years, I had no idea if my sister was still with the family because she had already a few broken down options. Who knows if she's going to have another one. And yeah, and actually it was my mom who helped me start the process of trying to find her. I remember I went home for about 6 months last year, and brought the idea to mom that I want to try to find my sister. So I called the CS in Kitchener, and that was laughable. No offense to CAS, but I called 3 different times. First time I was like, hi, I don't know how this works. I'm looking for my sister. Don't know where to start. She's adopted. Kitchener's the last place I know. And they're like, okay, let me transfer you. And they transfer me to some place, and someone picks up the phone. They're like, this is the wrong department. And they transfer me, and then the phone would the call would get canceled. So I'd call again, and I'd go through the whole spiel again. Hey, I'm looking for my sister, blah, blah, blah. They're okay, let me transfer you. And again, it happened, and it was really crappy, actually. So I told my mom about it. I was like, 1 second. She writes an email to, I don't know who it was, but it took all of 5 minutes for them to get back to her. She's like, oh, Mary Jo, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, okay, great. I know my mom's a rock star, but can't you guys take me seriously? Anyways, yeah. So the lady saw my mom's email, and she actually started to look for my sister, and she went the extra step. She didn't have to, my sister had already left that family, and she wasn't involved in care or anything. So she went the extra step to try to find her. And then I got a call randomly in June. I think it was June. Yeah, it was June. I got a call randomly from some lady. The lady was the one my mom was emailing, and she's like, hi, Princess. I found your sister. I need you to make an email that doesn't have your last name in it, and we can get you connected. So she connected us. And then she apologized for how the system treated my siblings and I, and how it wasn't right, how they tore us all apart, and just with no remorse. And she felt really bad. And actually, I should probably reply to her. She sent me another email recently. I should probably get back to that. But yeah, I don't remember what the question was or how I even got here. Oh, right. Yeah. So yeah, 15 years, my sister. We're connected again now. But yeah, it was pretty hard. And I had 2 other brothers that I had lost connection with as soon as I went into care for 13 years for one of them, and then 14 the other one. The 13-year one I got reconnected again with after writing an exam. He drove to London and picked me up, and drove to Toronto, and my mom met him, and it was wild. And then my other brother, we got connected. We don't talk right now, or yeah, we don't talk. We haven't talked in the last year, but it is what it is. I'm still connected with my sister that I found last year, and I'm really happy. And we're still trying to navigate the whole situation, because I know her as a baby, and like I said, I felt like a mother to my little sister. I also felt like a mother to her until we were split up. So trying to see her as the young adult that she is so beautiful and she's grown so much. And I'm so happy for her. It's just trying to not be such a mother and just be a sister. It's new for me, and it's a work in progress.
That's beautiful. Thanks for sharing all that. And ladies, I have to say, I'm pretty impressed that we got through half of our questions today.
All right.
Now you have to say you're going to come back for part 2 because there's still a lot of great stuff. I feel like we just scratched the surface of this topic. A colleague of mine, she said, "Oh, April 10th, it's National Siblings Day. You should do a snack and chat on siblings." So that's, I want to say kudos to, because that was her great idea, and that's what brought the two of you on Snack and Chat. So before we say goodbye, is there any last thought or anything that you want to share before we sign off for today?
Thanks, Princess.
Yeah.
I think that was very rich for people. Thanks for sharing your experience.
Oh, no worries. Thanks for having me.
No, 100%. Thank you so much for sharing your so much. It's really appreciated. I think a lot of people, I think I haven't had time because I've been so engrossed in our conversation. I'm going to go and check. There's tons of comments. So thank you to you both. And we look forward to the next time you come on. Next week on Snack and Chat, my guest is going to be Angela Geddes. She's the author, and we're going to talk about her book, A Complicated and Beautiful Brain. So you want to tune in next week, Tuesday at 12:15. Bye for now. Take care of yourselves, everyone. Have a great week.